Here is how I 3D kitbashed some goo movers. If you saw my last video, I kitbashed some hive scum. The kitbash inspired me to really go full dingus and do a Necromunda gang. The goo movers. The movers of goo. The fellow shippers of goo. The goofy goobers. The ghoul. The main idea is that these guys move goo from one factory to the next. A perfect candidate for ambushes by greedy gangs. I made a mock-up of what I wanted in Photoshop, taking some models I had access to and seeing what they'd look like together. I knew I wanted to use the Iron Blood Plotters kit from the Maker's Cult, as well as the Neophyte Hybrids kit from Games Workshop. I drew these cool cyberpunk wasteland heads, and our good friend Printed Encounter came up with this. He made a bunch of modular parts so I could make my own variations. They're available in my Model in Bits box for my Patreon supporters. Also, make sure to check out Printed Encounter. He just started a really cool modular ball bot Kickstarter that are a joy to paint and have a ton of character. Use the link below if you're interested. I'm planning on using the ball bots for Stargrave and Space Station Zero. It's never a bad idea to have a few big shooty robots lying around. I brought in a bunch of files to Blender and started messing about. Here I made sure stuff looked cool, as well as posed things to add a little variation. You can easily use the posing tool in sculpting mode to make slight tweaks. Then clean up the mesh with the smoothing tool in case things get funky. The masking tool can also help keep parts of objects from moving when you're posing and stretching things. I also scaled the bodies and arms down to 95%. For whatever reason, I thought this looked better. One cool thing about working in Blender like this is that your project can morph a little. I knew I wanted these guys to use the later generation Gene Stealer Cult parts. So on the Champion guys, instead of using human arms, I decided to use arms found within the Iron Hive range from the Maker's Cult, which is more in line with the weird Gene Stealer-ish stuff found in the Neophyte kit, and makes it stand out a little from the crowd. One question I get from time to time is, do I print stuff in one piece or separate pieces? And it really depends on the model. In this case, I thought I could assemble some of them easily enough post-printing. So I printed a few of these heads and arms separately, which allowed me to use the pre-supported files as is. Otherwise, I clip objects into each other to make sure I get the exact pose I want. I export them as one piece and add supports later myself. For stuff like these Iron Hive arms, it made the most sense to clip them into the body and print it out together. That way, I wouldn't have to worry about cutting the resin and trying to make a clean, natural looking join. You just have to be extra careful of resin traps, which are pockets where uncured resin can get trapped. You can avoid this by clipping things into each other with the elastic deform tool. I ended up doing a little physical kitbashing as well, using the later gen arms from the Neophyte kit. They weren't perfect fits, so I used a little green stuff, sprue goo, and plastic glue to make sure everything was smooth as possible. With the kitbashing done, it was time to paint. I'm going to show how to paint the less armored guys, but it's all the same stuff. The first step was to prime with Pro Acryl Neutral Gray. For whatever reason, I decided not to spray from below with red ink on some of these guys. But the ones I've done post-filming have benefited from that step. Then, instead of zenithal highlighting with a white ink like I normally do, I sprayed from about a 45-degree angle with French Mirage Blue, and then zenithaled with Huge Miniatures Blue Skies. This is what they looked like after airbrushing. To add more detail to the suits, I highlighted with Blue Skies, and then added some bright ivory and highlighted again. I've painted a good amount of these guys since filming, and I found that there's almost no difference between me carefully highlighting with a brush and me quickly dry brushing. So I definitely recommend dry brushing this step. I painted the armor panels, filters, and aprons with dark, warm gray. And painted the boots and belts with grim black Army Painter speed paint. Then I went back to the armor and aprons and highlighted by mixing in some bright warm gray with the dark warm gray from before. Then, with straight, bright warm gray, I highlighted the aprons and created little scratches in the armor. Finally, I added some dark umber to make some deep scratches and chips in the armor. Yellow is a notoriously difficult color to get right. One of the big tips out there is to first base coat areas you want to be yellow with pink. I saw this in a Vince Venturella video a while ago. So I first painted the gloves with eraser pink and then added a layer of yellow. I think it came out pretty well. I then painted all the metal stuff with metal color steel or copper. Next, it was time to paint the mutated arms. I painted a Gene Stealer a while ago and wanted to do a similar color scheme. There are a few variations of mutated arms on these guys. On the fellas with this smoother chitin style arms, I first painted the whole arm white. Then, in the middle of the chitin, I painted a stripe of orange. I created a coconut crab sort of look by painting dots of orange and white on the border of the orange line. On the arms that are more bio-mutated looking, I again painted the whole arm with white, then painted the top half with orange, and then painted the border between the white and orange with a mix of white and orange. These sort of things are good for wet blending practice. The last step is to take some Skeleton Horde contrast paint and go over the mutated arms to tone down the white and to help smooth everything out and make people think you're great at blending. The heads have these big old bug eyes on them, so let's paint those. First, base coat the lenses with black. Then paint a line at the top and bottom with green, leaving a line of black in the middle. Then add white to the green and paint less and less of the top and the bottom, following the curve of the lenses. Finally, adding some spot highlights of white. It's a good idea to use the same green to paint any vials and tanks of goo. A fun defining feature of the goo movers is the white expression lines on their eyes. This is a tough step to film, but just go in with a sharp brush and thinned white and do your best. You can always go back in and outline the lines with black to make them pop. I added some dirty down rust to all the metal and sparingly on the armor and masks. This is a great way to add a ton of character to metal quickly. I pan aligned with Nuln Oil to bring out the details on the body and mask. I based them, and the goo movers are done, ready to move goo from one spot to the next. And now the moment you've all been waiting for, some lore.
These guys are made to move goo. Literally ship it from one factory to the next. Perfect targets for gangs to intercept in the dangerous Underhive and Ash Wastes. The goo is useful for manufacturing of chems and weapons. The energy within it can also be tapped, making it a valuable and common target for greedy gangs. High exposure to the goo induces a strong urge to move it from place to place. The goo practically spreads itself. When asked about being placed in a vat of goo after a failed goo heist, worker number 118 said,
"Honestly, it felt pretty great. I expected it to hurt, but no big deal. The only real change is I really got a hankering for moving this goo around. The drives to each factory are kinda dangerous, but you're with good company. Anyway, I should probably get going. There's goo to move." I entered these guys into a painting competition called Every Model is a Necromunda Model, hosted and judged by Fueled by Chaos, Carl R. Johnston, and Papa Glitch. Hamilton, Carl, and Chris had some extremely kind words for me.
Really cool. The gloves, the marigolds. Like, I'm a big fan of marigolds.
Marigolds, yep.
I mean, my favourite is clearly Horn Guy, because, you know, they've got horns.
I don't know, I like the guy reloading.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like the guy reloading. He looks, like a meter.
You get very
if I was playing a
few
video
reloading
game
models.
and these were all the characters, I'd pick that class.
Yeah.
This gang has, it nailed all the things of, like, there's kit bashing, there's, like, narrative cohesion, there is individuality between all of them, but they all feel together, and the color scheme is simple but effective.
And their enthusiasm towards Necromunda and kit bashing is infectious. I'm thrilled to be featured in their Top 10 Gangs Winners video. There are a ton of insane kit bashes and gangs entered into the competition. Make sure to head over to Fueled by Chaos's channel and check out all the videos on the competition. Thanks for watching! I made some other cool kit bashes for the goo movers, so let me know if you're sick of them already or if you want to see more. I made a few walkers and these hulking looking guys who are used to carry heavy barrels around. Thanks again to Printed Encounter for making the Wasteland punk heads. Make sure to give him a follow and check out his new BallBot Kickstarter using the link below. If you end up making a kit bash with the Wasteland heads, please let a brother know. Also, thank you to my Patreon supporters. It's a huge help and motivator to keep doing this whole YouTube thing. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and feel free to check out all the links below. Alright, bye-bye.